Hey there, welcome to episode 39 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We are recording this at about 1:40 p.m. on Wednesday, August 7, 2024. I've been recording later in the afternoons recently. I have no particular reason. Hopefully nobody is sitting there waiting for a publication on the usual days earlier in the day. The Quaggling Sand audio program is named after my own invention, I guess, of a word, a term for what you might call pins and needles. Today it is an audio program wherein I share stories that have some sort of meaning, perhaps, to me, maybe to you. They could be interesting or funny or tragic, who knows? And maybe you will take something from them. Maybe you'll just tilt your head and wonder. Today's tales are flight stories. As I have mentioned in previous episodes, I was traveling quite a bit when I was working as an software architect and technical liaison, whatever that is, technical liaison for Intel Corporation. And as I'm speaking today, they're laying off 16,000 people again. 15 or 16,000, I can't remember. I think it's probably in there somewhere. Headline rounding. The history of Intel layoffs is replete with sad stories. I'm not going to get into Intel too much today, but I was laid off in a 12,000 person layoff round. So interesting times. I do not care for Intel. Not a fan, but I did have what some there at Intel called a dream job, an opportunity to travel, of course, and meet with the customers, the people that we were making our maker products for. So makers, hackathons, good times. So the flying to me was fine, as I would often tell if I was heading to the airport at 4:30 in the morning, not uncommon. A Lyft driver would pick me up. Sometimes I would drive myself for weekend trips, but if it was going to be longer than 2 days, I figured the balance of Lyft cost versus short-term parking actually made it sort of it's 4:30 in the morning. I may as well get a ride. So, but on those mornings, I would get the where are you going at this hour? I'd say, oh, I travel for work all the time, and today I'm going to Oregon, or I'm going to Newark, or whatever it was. And the person would always say, oh, I miss traveling. I wish I could travel more, but it's hard with kids, or it's hard when, they'd have life choices getting in the way and so on. And I would always say my pat answer, no kids, no pets, no plants, always ready to go. So let us speak today about flight stories. Hopefully wherever you found this audio program, you have the episode details. Within are the show notes. There are 3 links. 2 of them are the usual shameless self-promotion. One is a YouTube clip, totally optional. The summary, which I will read to you now. I spoke about some world travels in episode 20 as related to my Intel-related globetrotting. But there are a few things we frequent flyers learn regardless of the reason for travel. Why not share some of my perspective on the mechanics of airport life or airplane life or travel in general? These don't apply, I think, to like if I were traveling by boat or train, I think that it would be different. There's something about, especially in a post 9/11 world, and now in a post-pandemic world, probably even worse. I've only traveled a little bit in the post-pandemic times, but post 9/11, but pre-pandemic, it was still a little bit weird getting on a plane. I did a small amount of traveling internationally before, a few trips to Eindhoven, which I will talk about the first one, a trip to Japan, but certainly my time with Intel led, and this was post-9/11, those were pre-9/11, post-9/11, travel for Intel. I definitely had an opportunity to learn the ways of traveling as far as flight. To be honest, in several instances, I was able to take advantage of train and bus, coach, if you like, in my destination cities and places. And there's a lot to be said for the relaxed. It's a little bit calmer getting on a train, commuter train, or a train traveling any distance. I'm not going to talk about it today, but I did take a train from Cork to Dublin. That was actually fun. It was very nice. I don't know if you've heard this before. Dublin is pretty green. So green as far as the eye could see outside the train window. So it was a nice, relaxed trip. A fun fact, when I flew down to Cork, did I fly down there? Yeah, I guess I did. I flew down to Cork, then I took the train back so Dublin to Cork, Cork to Dublin. I flew down to Cork, got out of the airport. It was a short trip. I was visiting the Coder Dojo, the original Coder Dojo. Bill Liao was going to be there. He's one of the co-founders of Coder Dojo. I didn't know where I was going, so I figured I'll just jump in a taxi and they'll know, which he did. So as we're driving along, I said, I've never been to Cork. I've been to Dublin several times. What's the difference? And he said, I think Cork is more laid back. And I thought that was amusing. And Cork was quite nice. I would go there again. I would go all the places I've been to again, in fact. The links for today's show are the shameless self-promotion, of course, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. I should use Ko-fi.com/DanHugo more. I keep talking about how websites for all of my various audio programs, my media productions, are on the to-do list. Unfortunately, the to-do list appears to be growing up, not shrinking up. There's always more stuff to do, but yeah, websites are still on there. The websites will fit into the grand scheme of new media. The startup I'm working on here in Vegas, a solopreneur effort at the moment, but it is based on our open source efforts with Innovate for Vegas Foundation, and all of that is an occasional topic on the Cafe Genius Impresario's audio program. In the absence of a deep bench of guest bookings, I used to have guests on both the Let's Innovate for Vegas and Cafe Genius Impresario's audio programs. Getting guests to have a microphone that works and so on is a little bit more, I don't want to say effort, that's not quite the word, but it is kind of a roadblock to success. And I think if we can get a little bit more notoriety, maybe there will be more preparation ahead of time, more value. So we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, let's talk about traveling, which is something I would very much like to do again. My flying, I originally called this airport life, but that's not really true. Let's talk about it. Getting to the airport is where I will begin. These are Las Vegas-based tales mostly. My trip to Eindhoven, and while I did not write it down, I might talk about my trip to Japan. Those were when I was living in lovely Silicon Valley. So that involved international travel, involved heading up to San Francisco Airport, which was always a joy for traffic. SFO is actually a nice airport. They have, in Terminal 3, last time I was there, so it may or may not be still there, an actual legitimate espresso bar, and I don't remember which gate it's near. If you happen to be at Terminal 3 and you're on the like people mover thing, the flat escalator style thingy, it's not an escalator, but you, rather than turning left and going towards the gates, and there's restaurants that you continue straight and kind of go off on the, there's more gates over there. So straight ahead and then veer to the right. There are some more gates down there. Espresso bar. Very nice. So my trip to the airport was about 25 minutes here in Vegas of driving, not counting parking, traffic, waiting for a rideshare driver when I would do that, and other deviations. So pretty much, though, especially an early flight, I had the timing was down. I could get there dead to rights. I could get there on time, no problem. And I had a little edit of the notes there. If I was going for a weekend hackathon and whatnot, I would drive myself. So the problem, if there was one, was that, that's my third point, so I'll save it for no, I'll say it now. I'll switch them around. I could get to the airport, like I said, dead to rights, no problem. And I would occasionally time it so well, I was so in the groove that I would I did not stop walking. Let's just say I would get to the airport, go through getting my boarding pass, checking a bag if I needed to. Sometimes I didn't, for a weekend trip, I didn't have a bag to check, but for longer trips, I don't do the one bag thing. Why bother? I don't need that kind of pressure. So the whole process I had so down, the airport, the trip to the airport, the process, the going through security, everything, that multiple times I would get to the gate. And by the way, United Airlines, the gate that was always my starting point for my travel was 100% of the time the farthest walk from anywhere. It was the end of the line, always, every time. So like gate 56 or something. And I would arrive at my gate just as they began boarding, and I would not even stop walking. I would have my boarding pass ready, hand it to them, good to go, continue down the jetway. It was frightening how well timed or well structured my departure plans were from the moment I woke up in the morning. So that was too close. And I've thought about this. I had never missed a flight for work related travel. I missed one flight one time for a non-work related trip, and I had to catch the next flight. So not a big deal. I literally missed the flight by moments, probably bad habits. So, but yeah, I never missed a flight for work-related travel. Now, I did have a very long layover at JFK because of a connection delay. I'm calling an audible because I didn't write this down, so I'll say it right now. I got to the Las Vegas airport on time, and they said, this flight and your connection might not work. You may, because your flight is departing Vegas late, and it might be too tight to make your connection. And I said, okay. But knowing as I did by this time in my travel lifestyle, that there was always another plane, I said, well, I'm already packed, ready to go. Why don't I try it? And when I get to New York, I'll figure it out. And they're like, okay. So I got to New York, missed the connection by minutes, 20 minutes maybe. And I spent 12 hours at JFK. I don't know why I was flying through. Oh, I was flying through JFK because reasons. Like if I'm planning to have a layover, I would always aim for Newark. Just it was a better scheme for having a layover. But I missed my flight and I spent about 12 hours. There was no outlet near the luggage claim area where the only open coffee shop was. That was open 24 hours or something. The outlets were all upstairs by the ticket counters, but there were no coffee shops or anywhere to really sit. So I had to have my laptop, my Intel laptop, MacBook, something, resting on some, because where the outlets were, I had it resting on some of those sort of you can pull the ribbon out to create the lanes that people snake through to get to counter, right? So they had these posts. They were all against the wall. There was an outlet. I'm like, there are no other outlets that I can get to. There are no people around. So I rested my laptop on a couple of these posts, plugged it in, and I was able to use my laptop plugged in while I was trying to make my new booking to get to Dublin. I was actually intending to get to Dublin for a meeting. Because of this delay, I missed the first meeting. We had to juggle some things around, and it all worked out. At the end of the day, everything was fine. But it was technically, I guess, I missed a flight because of that. But otherwise, good times. Definitely don't get to the airport more than 0 minutes ahead of your flight. And there was a time, speaking of timing, there was a time when I could begin, I'm not kidding, begin packing. Now, of course, I already had my clothes, were laundered and, whatever. I was basically ready, but I would begin packing. And I'm sold on the packing cubes, so I'd put the stuff in the packing cubes, I would everything sorted. But I would begin the process of packing after using the mobile application for Lyft. Uber I stopped using completely in Vegas for other reasons. They were jerks. Began packing after contacting Lyft for my airport ride. So got the driver, bam, accepted, 20 to 25 minutes. Because usually they were driving up from the strip, because that's where all the riders were. So they would drive up, especially if it was early in the morning, there would be nobody on the strip. So they're like, oh, okay, I'll make the drive. If it was busy at this time, if it was like in the midday or normal times, very difficult to get a lift or a rideshare because the people were down near the strip and they're moving around and stuff. But at odd hours, it was a little bit easier to get someone to actually drive up to Centennial Hills, where I live, which is about something like 12 or 15 miles. I think it's 12, north of the stratosphere. Or no, that's further than that. Certainly, once you get on the freeway, it's about 12 miles. I think it's 15 miles from the stratosphere. Either way, so I would begin packing after that. Okay, driver, 20, 25 minutes, start packing, throw the stuff in the packing cubes, get everything sorted, and ready to go. The packing cube, so production by street. The packing cubes were in use when I was taking longer than a weekend trip. So weekend trips, I would often travel with my carry-on. But anything longer, which many of my trips were 4 days, 5 days, weeks. So main bag checked, of course, and my carry-on. The carry-on was not always necessary, so I'd have the laptop bag and the checked bag or whatever the need was for the trip. Unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, more and more Lyft drivers were taking the plunge, joining the force, and within weeks or months, like I was doing this several times, really getting into my quick packing, ready to go moves, and Lyft drivers started appearing within a long walking distance of me. So fairly quickly, I got your driver will be there in 4 minutes or 7 minutes. Like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So that was good and bad. The first time I flew to Eindhoven. Now, technically, my first international travel was to Japan, but I'll say that I didn't even write it down, but I'll include that next. But my first trip to Eindhoven, Holland, was funny to me because of this. I was flying with Bruce. He was what was he? The president, I guess, whatever his title was, of our software and electronics business unit of the Flat Display Systems group in the Eindhoven collective. I'm sorry, in the Philips collective, which was based in Eindhoven, but Philips North America, I guess, whatever, what a big international company, who knows. So Bruce, myself, and technically my manager in our group, Brad, we just started the software and electronics business group. Joop was a person. Joop, actually. He worked for CSR eventually. That was a weird intersection later. We got the business unit started at Philips in San Jose. And like the second or third day, we were off to the airport to head to Eindhoven to meet with some of our team that was in Eindhoven, see the lay of the land, do some introductions. Philips's culture was very in-person meetup, so company directory was impossible to come by, etc. That was a different thing. And by the way, you should always meet people you're working with remotely at least once, if at all possible. So there was value in this thing, even though they didn't have a company directory. They should have, but going and meeting people in person was valuable. So there was much advice coming from Bruce. Bruce had traveled, of course, many times. Nice, I guess, to have some thoughtful input from the guy, the president of our group, I guess. I had known Bruce for some time. He was really needling us. I was wearing my traditional travel outfit, which is some sort of a thermal type top with an undershirt, jeans. At the time, I had not joined the slip-on seasoned traveler group, I suppose you could say. But, some comfortable shoes. And so a comfortable arrangement. He was more of a proper, like a sport coat traveler, maybe with a tie even. And Brad was, having lived in Europe for quite some time, Brad, I guess, had a little bit more of a stylish bent when traveling. He was carrying a very snazzy, hard briefcase. and I just had like a messenger bag style laptop bag, I think, if I remember correctly. So we get to the airport, probably San Francisco, of course, SFO, and he had many suggestions. And like, oh, you should wear something different, or you should do this, and you should put this in there, and you should do all kinds of quibbling. And I was indeed stopped at our first gate in San Francisco to get extra inspection. It was fairly minor, kind of a, can you step over here? Can we look through? Is this, and this, that? Okay, everything's fine. So it was, oh, you know what you see? You should do this. You should do that. And sure, good to know. Good to know. And by the way, this is where I will put the, because I didn't even mention the video. I do have the clip in the link section to the, it's a clip from the movie Up in the Air. And it's where, what's his name? Yeah, the character is Ryan Bingham. I'm totally spacing on his name. Thank you. He's talking to Anna Kendrick. That's the actress, Anna Kendrick. And it's George Clooney. Yeah, there you go. George Clooney as Ryan Bingham. And he's telling Anna Kendrick's character, whose character's name I don't recall, giving her advice on how to get through a security line more quickly. He's stereotyping, and she calls him racist, but he says, no, it's stereotyping, because, people who wear slip-ons get through security faster. It's easier to pop them off, pop back on, traveling light, not trying to bring weapons. One time I saw a person going through security with their chef's knives rolled up. And they stopped him and said, what is this? You can't bring any of this through. So yeah, that added some delay. So strategic lining up, strategic queuing. So when we reached our point of entry in Europe, and I don't remember where that was, but it was somewhere. Point of entry. Our point of destination, of course, would be Eindhoven, which is where they actually do the checking when you enter the country. So when you leave the airport, you've sort of reached your destination, so that there's more done at that point. But point of entry, somehow maybe we had to switch from international to, did we fly into Schiphol? I can't remember. So if we flew into Schiphol, then maybe leaving international to domestic, or maybe we flew in to England. Either way, I mentioned Brad had his snazzy hard briefcase, and it was sort of a champagne color. It was pretty sharp looking, not the usual sort of nickel looking, like brushed nickel. So he got inspected, and of course Bruce was there with thoughtful advice once again. Oh, you know what you should do? Both of you should this and that. So we reached Eindhoven, and Eindhoven is not a huge airport. It's a nice airport, but not huge. We had gathered our luggage, and we were walking towards the final checkpoints, or however that's arranged. And Bruce was taken aside, and the security personnel were putting gloves on and had their microscopes out, and they rifled through everything he owned. They had a table and like a little side area, and they're going through everything. And Brad and I were kind of watching this curiously, like, And another security person came up and said, would you be interested in that? And we're like, no. He said, okay, you can go. And we're like, okay, we're out of here. We waited outside the airport for Bruce, and no more lectures. That was nice. But it was interesting. The making that part of the journey go smoothly is it's a little bit worthwhile, especially if you're cutting it extra close, as I so often did. A quick release belt, slip-on shoes, my Scott E-vest. Absolute shout out to Scott E-vest. If you throw everything in your Scott E-vest, boarding passes, phones, chargers, batteries, Kindle, book, whatever it is, everything, throw it in there. You get through security, you just take the jacket, the vest off, put it in the bin, goes through the x-rays. I don't think there was ever a time when they said, hey, what's this? And there was more than one time when I accidentally had a Swiss Army knife on my, not on my keychain, but I keep it sort of with my keys separately. separately so that I don't bring it with me to the airport, but I had done it this time. So you stick it in your Scotty vest. It gets lost in the mess. A Swiss Army knife, the size, it's like 3 inches long or something, 2 inches or something, very tiny. I think it's the manager with the pen and a scissors. And yeah, so not going to be taking down any aircraft with it, but sticking everything in the Scotty vest definitely made a difference. So that was my my take home from that video clip of Up in the Air. Get through security quickly. No lectures needed. Just some funny story. Never did hear advice like that from Bruce again, and I did learn from that experience. So Bruce did fulfill his life journey to inform others through his trials and tribulations. My luggage. Oh, by the way, okay, so my first flight to Japan, totally uneventful. I was traveling with Ron from True Vision. Ron was the VP of sales VP of Asia Pacific sales. Super nice guy. Still talk to him now and then to this day. So this is, we traveled in, was it 1998, 97 maybe? We were going to Japan to meet with Sony. We were going to spend 5 days in Japan. It was 30 days after Aum had set off a sarin gas bomb in the Shinjuku train station. We were going to be staying at the Shinjuku Hyatt. So that's not material for the story, but it's sort of interesting. So Ron got us a limo, picked me up at where I was living in Sunnyvale. Through my too much luggage, my first international trip, my first expedited passport to get to everything. So never done this before. 5 days. I probably packed for 10. Ridiculous. Everybody learned somehow. Threw all my stuff in the limo. We're heading to the airport. And he's like, when we get to the airport, we're going to try to upgrade your flight because we didn't book it ahead of time, sufficiently ahead of time. You're in economy, so we're going to try to upgrade it to business. So we'll see what happens. Like, okay. So we get to the airport. We go through everything. We're at the gate. And he says, okay, before we go up to the ticketing or the gate agent there, because we checked in and all that. And I think he asked about an upgrade. And they said, you go, ask when you get to the gate and see what happens, see if there's anything available. So we get to there and he says, before we go up to the gate agent, I want you to know this person will decide. This is the person that makes the decision, and they can help you or they can screw you. So be nice to them. Now, it's not that I was not nice to people, but you basically, lay it on. Be extra super duper nice. So we get to the gate, the desk, and Ron is showing his credentials to get to check in, right? And I said, "Hey, how you doing today? I'm hoping to get an upgrade. So let me know if you need anything." Like, I was making no bones about it. I said, "Do you need a coffee or anything? Is there anything I can do for you?" She started laughing. She's like, "No, but we'll see what happens." So the flight to Japan was very popular. The boarding area started getting pretty full, a little crowded. Standing room only. At some point, there was, as boarding time approached, and I could see a hand holding a boarding pass. The woman who was bringing it to me was not as tall as the crowd. So I could see the boarding pass over, and she walked right up to me, handed it to me, and said, "Here you go." And I, thanks. So Ron goes, "See, it works." So that was nice. Got the upgrade to business class both ways, to and from Japan. Good times, great trip. I have referred to this trip elsewhere also, but the entire thing was a huge learning experience for my first trip out of the country. So good times. So many things were learned. My luggage will make the flight. But will I? That's a good question. So going from Queens, I was in New York, the New York area. I was going from Queens, where I believe I was at a Maker Faire, across Manhattan, where I stopped for a lunch meeting that I was ultimately a waste of time, but I stopped for a lunch meeting. We stayed there a little bit longer than planned, not much. And I had to get to Newark to fly back to Vegas. And the bridge was down to one lane, I think, due to some construction. I think it was on the bridge, but certainly they reduced traffic for construction on either end of the bridge or whatever the case was. So one lane crossing. There was traffic in general. It was lunchtime, so probably traffic anytime. But I had an Uber. my Uber boycott applies in Vegas, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So my Uber driver, I think it was an Uber Black. It was a very nice vehicle, and he's like, "I'm going to get you there on time. Don't worry about it." And I said, there's gonna be another flight. So if we don't make it, don't do anything crazy. We'll make it. And if I don't, there's another plane right after. We made it to the curb anyway, with 20 minutes to departure. Now, fun fact, there are sky caps. There are people that are on the curb working for the airline. They'll take your bag. You can check it in right there. They'll put it on a little conveyor belt. It will magically get to your plane, get on the flight with you. Not at 20 minutes, though. At 20 minutes, the guy looks at me and says, it's too close. You got to go check in at the counter. Maybe they'll take it. I don't know if they'll even let you on. And of course, that's just the way it is. So I said, okay, thanks. I'll find out. So the Uber driver is like, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. And I had his number. I guess you can text him through the app. It's been a long time, so that would come in handy later. So I go up to the counter. I go, I don't think this is going to work. So if there's a flight after and the person behind the counter is typing away, my bag is on the scale. So I just put it there, have it. And I said, if there's another flight, maybe we'll just do that. Cause I think we're cutting it a little bit close here. And without responding to that, the person said, well, and took the bag, put it on the conveyor belt behind them and said, this bag is getting on your flight. You should get moving and see if you will too. So I was like, oh, geez. So now it's down to like 12 minutes or something crazy. So I get through security somehow unscathed. Like that never happens that smoothly. I basically walk through, no problem. Bam, bam, done. Probably still trying to get my shoes back on while I'm walking. But I'm good. I'm walking to the gate. I'm not running to the gate. Why is that? Well, luckily the gate was pretty close. And I'm like, well, at this point, it seems like the door should be shut, right? We are too close to push back. So I should not be allowed on this flight. We'll see what happens with my bag at that point. So I'm approaching the gate. The entire the area around the gate is empty. Everyone is boarded. There's not even other people walking to other gates. It's just me walking to this gate. There's a person, I think it was a woman, holding the jetway door open. And probably like 50 yards out, she says, "Mr. Hugo?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "We're waiting for you." Like, wow. So get your frequent flyer mileage status. Definitely. I'm not sure why they held they didn't hold the flight. But they held closing the door. So we probably pushed back, within some margin of error. So it wasn't crazy, but I'm amazed to this day that worked out like that. And I sent the driver a message that said, "You were right. We didn't have to do anything crazy, but certainly crazy things happened." Aligned, I suppose. And I got on the flight, headed home. By the way, I've mentioned this. I think I mentioned it in episode 20. I was on at least 100 airplanes per year, a little bit more, while I was working for Intel. So I was traveling all the time, really able to get into the groove, develop my workflow, my booking skills, etc. So this one's a little strange. I have titled this section literally. So I was on a really crowded flight, reasonably long, something probably 5 or 6 hours, probably domestic. That seems about right. Probably from the East Coast to the West Coast, or the West Coast to the East Coast, something like that. And I was in the port side economy exit row as usual. I almost always try to get the exit row if I was flying economy. I would often get upgraded to business class. Once again, premier points. Your frequent flight mileage is good for at least something. I mean, I was not putting up insane numbers, but 100 flights a year, it adds up. So I'm in the exit row. Couple of rows back, also on the left side, port side. There were two women, probably friends or related, maybe they were sisters or something, who knows, were allegedly responsible for this brood of children. There's probably something like 4 or 5 kids. It seemed like a dozen. They were running around. They were just generally not chilling. They were frolicking, making noise, running, playing, falling down. Who knows what else, bumping into things. And so obviously they chilled out for a minute as we were taking off, but they got right back into it. Like, hey, we're on a plane, but so what? And the two women, maybe they had headphones on or something. It didn't really bother. And I know this was getting on people's nerves. Now, luckily, the children seemed to be they'd run by or something. Honestly, I think I was sitting too close to their chaperones for them to hang around. So they were going out. They were traveling far from the moms, the aunts, whoever they were. So they weren't hanging around me, but they would go running by every once in a while. So I didn't get the full brunt of the assault, but they were just being troublesome. They were, hey, what are you gonna do? And so it's two women traveling with some kids. The kids are getting a little rambunctious. It could have been worse. We were not on a Greyhound bus. We could have been. That would have been a different story. So on landing, and again, this is a couple of hours of chaos. The kids returned to their frolicking, even as we were, like, everybody's getting ready to deplane. So many people are standing up, stretching, getting their stowed items from the overhead bins, all that stuff, all the usual. But these kids are like, nope, we're still in playtime mode. I'm laughing about it now, thinking about it. And the flight crew were not overly concerned, I guess. They were doing their business to get us ready to deplane, get the plane ready for exit, and so all the usual stuff. So and the kids were not like, assaulting people. They were just assaulting their senses. It was a cap on a noisy flight, and clearly some passengers had had enough. So one passenger, probably, like, I'm like 3 or 4 rows up from where the two women are standing at this point. The passenger who's about to say something is to my left when I'm looking towards the back of the plane. So I'm going to say they were either in the middle section somewhere. It was a wide body, so there were 4 seats in the middle, and then some more seats on the starboard side. So somewhere over there, someone says something to the effect that you should maintain control of your children. They've been very annoying. You people, and then that was it. The two women are like, what? You people? And everyone said, oh no, he means you two people. Don't make it something it is not. He was literally saying the two of you did nothing. And so it was a point of frustration. Could have gone a little bit off the rails probably, but a different time, I guess. If it had happened today, it would not have been so easily quenched with the public commentary. But yeah, none of the fellow passengers were having that. They had all had enough of the children and the lax supervision. So no one was even pondering going with the alternate meaning, or now it's the primary meaning of the you people beginning of a sentence. So that was interesting. I myself was on a flight to Rome one time, and apparently I was told a 4-year-old little girl was in the seat immediately behind me. I was fortunate enough, it was because of I think there were some booking problems or something. I ended up being in like the middle seat, the middle section of seats, and in like the second from the port side, like, what would that be? A, B, C, D, E probably, second seat in the middle section of seats. So this was a rarity. I was not looking forward to it, but I figured, okay, well, Rome is waiting for me. It was for Maker Faire Rome, and so we'll make the best of it. I'm not above sitting in economy. That's fine. I'm not a snob when it comes to that, but it was not an ideal comfort level. So this 4-year-old little girl is behind me, and she decides, from the time we leave the ground and we're up in the air and we're moving through the air on our way to Rome, she decides it's probably a good idea to kick the back of my seat for hours and hours. So that was the only time when I actually, at some point, probably, 2 hours in, I'm patient, but beware the patience. Or no, but beware the wrath of a patient man, I think it is. So at some point I just said, hey, can you tell her to stop kicking my seat, please? And the mom, I guess, was like, she's like a 4-year-old little girl. And I said, I don't care. Tell her to stop kicking my seat. Why does that even matter? Why does that enter the conversation? So that was the only time I had anything even similar to that. And I've been on planes with some oddball passengers that the flight crew were getting a little like, hey, keep an eye on that guy, that kind of stuff. But to be absolutely, I can't even equivocate on this. The most unusual incident on an airplane, quite literally, is there a doctor on the plane? This was a woman. So once again, portside exit row, my favorite, on an older 747. So I'm going to say it was like row 44, maybe. Portside galley is on the right. So the bathrooms and galley one of the galleys are to my right. So there's not even any center seating. So it's just me, exit row, plenty of leg room. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of getting the exit row if you can. Perfect. Just delightful. It's almost like a cheap business class. Not as much food and drink, but so I'm there, and I can hear that there's a woman about 3 or 4 rows back. She's having some difficulties, maybe breathing or something else, some issue, and so the flight crew is like, I'm saying flight crew. I know that's probably pilot, co-pilot, but the crew on the plane, the flight attendants, and so somebody says, oh, okay, let me see if there's a doctor, and they find a doctor. The doctor comes back. Well, how does that work out? How is there always I don't think they put it on the PA. Like, I don't think they announced the entire plane, but somehow a doctor was brought over to speak to the woman. He had a quick look. I don't know if the credentials were checked. He might have just been playing one on TV. Who knows? And I could hear he said to the flight attendant, we need to get her off this plane. Or not off this plane, but she needs to have medical attention when we land. So she needs to get off the plane quickly when we land, right? So this is not an emergency, combat landing, right? We're not going to drop 30,000 feet in 2 minutes. But she was having some difficulties, a minor crisis, and so that's fine. So the flight attendants made it, and luckily we were less than 30 minutes out. We were flying into China. I think it was Shanghai. It was not Shenzhen, so it must have been Shanghai. So we're flying into Shanghai. So we're pretty close, say 30 minutes. So they come on and they say, the flight attendants say in English and Chinese, that there's a passenger who will need to exit the plane the moment we land. There will be some medical or emergency people that will come on the plane to help the passenger get off. So please, everyone remain seated when we land so we can get the passenger off safely. Okay. That was repeated in Chinese. And then all of the flight attendants, we landed and we are taxiing to the gate. I think we had expedited, you're cleared all the way to the gate. So just roll, no holds, no snafus with which gate we're good. The emergency crew is waiting with the equipment to get her off the plane quickly and so on. So all the flight attendants move to near the exit door where I am. So now I'm looking at them. I can see their expressions, which is important. So I'm only laughing because it worked out. So we're approaching the gate. The flight attendants are looking around. They're like, a couple of people were milling around. They're like, sir, please remain seated so we can. First of all, we're still moving, so you're supposed to remain seated. But they're like, nobody get up. Nobody do anything. We got to get this woman off the plane. So we get to the gate. Doors open. Emergency crew comes on. They've got like ridiculously fluorescent, I think it was fluorescent green with maybe some fluorescent orange stripes or something. I think it was mainly fluorescent green was what I was remembering. So you could spot them. There's no getting confused by what they're here for. They have a little wheelchair that's aisle width, so it's not a gurney. So she'll be departing the plane in a seated position on a wheelchair-like device. So they get her out of her seat, they get her in the thing, they get her strapped in. She's all good. They do a quick check. She's clearly having a difficult time, but she's breathing. She's awake. She's cognizant, and so at this point, and again, all the flight attendants near me, They're waiting. They're like, everybody's near but staying out of the way. Something happened such that every single person ahead of the exit row, so everyone ahead of me, I could see them all very clearly, as could the flight attendants, and I could also see the flight attendants. They all stand up to start deplaning. So they're all milling around the aisle, and the medical crew, the emergency people, are to my right now, and they're like, huh? And the flight attendants all have the mouth agape, like, what is going on? And so they're getting, like, please, everyone stand, they're yelling, like, sit down. It was crazy. Like, how did everyone just decide, this is it, we're getting up now? No, we've had enough of this waiting for someone in medical strife. So in medical straits, I guess. So they got everybody calmed down, and the emergency people were able to get her off the plane. And I never heard anything again, but she got off the plane in reasonably good condition, I guess. I'm not a doctor, I can't say, but they did get her off. Everything eventually was fine. But I had never seen anything quite like that. Such a concerted effort to not care about what, hey, I know you told us to sit down and stay seated until the woman got off the plane, but we're not going to do that. Totally crazy. Nowadays you see, with cell phone videos of everything that ever happens on a plane making the rounds before the plane even lands. There have been some much more dramatic tales, but for all of my flying, I never saw an engine on fire. I heard those stories from people. Never had an engine out that I'm aware of. Never had major chaos. Never had an unruly passenger to that degree. I think if I had to, I'm laughing now because it was so bizarre. There was one occasion where 3 or 4 younger passengers, I think they were flying with their parents, fainted for some reason. And so one kid was, looked like a teenager, maybe a young junior, like 12, 13, something, was walking towards the bathroom on the right side of the plane. And I think once again, I was in the center seating for some reason, which is fine. So I remember he was passing me on my right, walking towards the bathrooms, and he just tipped over, fainted. And they're like, why are these kids fainting? So I don't know what happened with that. That was very weird. There was another incident where I was flying back from France. This is when I was working for SEM Microsystems. I was flying back from France. So this is I lived in Sunnyvale. So flying from France to Chicago, I think. And somehow there was the toilet had backed up, but it was not, the detritus in the toilet had left properly through the bottom. So for some reason, the rinse cycle did not shut off, or something happened such that water just started flowing out of the bathroom. Now it was potable water. It was from the drinking tanks. They do not have separate water tanks for drinking, making coffee, toilet. That's why they say never drink coffee on an airplane. If it doesn't come out of a can, no thank you. I'll take the cancer. So that was a reference up in the air. So water is running down the aisles. In this case, I'm sitting on the left side of the plane, port side, and I remember there were people in the middle near a movie screen, so they were up towards the bulkhead in the economy section, of course. And eventually they all had their feet up because the carpet, the rug was wet. Like everything got wet. There's water everywhere. And now, nobody should be drinking coffee or any sort of water-based beverages on a plane unless they come in a can. We just covered that. But guess what? No more flushing of toilets. We're going to have to hold it. And we're like another hour, 90 minutes or something from Chicago. So, and we're not just that one bathroom. No more flushing of toilets. There's no more water for drinking or otherwise. So for that lovely experience, and it could have been a lot worse. It was not, sometimes you got to hold it. We received a $25 voucher for our inconvenience. That was a good time. There was one passenger who was a little bit weird. So they had the drink cart near them to make sure they didn't do anything cagey or crazy. I think he was being cagey, possibly crazy. But yeah, never anything too outrageous. One time they overfueled the plane. They misread the. This is always a good sign. The ground crew had misread. Either they misread the number or they somehow assumed it was not in the universally standard units that they, like, oh, today I'm going to use cubic centimeters instead of pounds, or I honestly don't remember if it's pounds or kilograms. I think it's kilograms as the standard, but something happened and you could smell the delightful scent of a kerosene based jet fuel. Like, woo, that's stinky. So they had to defuel the plane, which is apparently not so common. So that was a long delay, but not really eventful. Multiple times there'd be problems with luggage loading or unloading. Loading was, of course, a problem that would delay the flight. So little snafus like this. I was telling, I think I was speaking to a flight attendant one time. I said, I'm on, as many frequent flyers will tell you, I'm on enough airplanes, maybe as many as you, I don't know. But when you're on so many airplanes, you're going to see weird things. You're going to have flights delayed. If 10% of flights are delayed and you are on 100 planes or more per year, 10 of your flights might be delayed. There's a pretty good chance. And there's really no reason. There's nothing to be gained by freaking out or whatever. So I never really had a ridiculous story to tell. It was always pretty tame. So, of course, as I mentioned, you're going to have a couple of problems here and there. I had my one bag, my check bag, went missing at Schiphol Airport. That's in Amsterdam. It's a cool shopping mall with an airport attached to it. You should check it out if you get the opportunity. Luckily, my connection was unusual, so I had plenty of time. I think I had like 4 hours. So I'm like, hey, where's my bag? Oh, we don't have it. It's somewhere else. Okay, we don't know where it is. Okay, your connection is weird. We didn't know where to put it. But it should be over here. Okay, well, try going to the lost luggage section over there. And so I was wandering around Schiphol Airport. Luckily, they speak all the languages, so there was no no problem there. The connection I was making, even though it was booked as a flight, it had a flight number. It had a gate, but the gate was not in the airport, and no one knew where it was. So I'm trying to speak to people. Not only I don't know where my luggage is, but also I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And they look at this and they're like, huh. Like, I'm supposed to be getting on this flight here somewhere. And they're like, I don't even know where this gate is. So it turns out the connection was actually a bus. It was a coach. It was a long distance bus. So very comfortable, very nice. But there's no indication in the booking information, my boarding pass or anything, that this was a bus and not an aircraft. And this is why apparently the luggage people are like, I don't even know where are we moving this bag to? There's not a gate with this. So they literally didn't know what to do with my luggage. So they just held it. And I'm visiting multiple lost luggage places where luggage ends up. I'm talking to everybody. I'm I don't even know what to do with this. Like they say it's here, it got here, but nobody knows where it is at this moment. And eventually, and again, I got plenty of time. So instead of chilling in Schiphol, I'm wandering around the airport trying to figure out, like, where's my luggage? They get someone somehow performs some sort of incantation and says, they found your bag. It will be on carousel, whatever, over in this section. So go there. Okay. So I go over there. There's nothing on the carousel. It's empty. I'm like, man, did I miss my bag? Did somebody else grab it? I'm like, now it's some other thing. So I'm wandering around. Carousel powers up, starts turning. One bag comes up, the little conveyor belt. I don't need to tell you whose it is. And the carousel stops. So they had one bag. They powered up an entire carousel for my bag to get to me. And luckily, I could see it. I was not standing right next to it, but I could see it. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go get my bag. Somewhere in there, I managed to determine that, it's a bus, and you need to go outside and go across there and go down to that side of wherever it was. Got on the bus, and it was a lovely ride to Eindhoven. Completely unexpected, but your travel should be an adventure. The journey is part of the gift, as they say. So that was a fun one. More than once, my luggage was banged up. Now it never got like ripped open and strewn everywhere. So I was lucky in that regard. Briggs and Riley, by the way, not a advertisement, just good stuff. One of the wheels was knocked off of my checked bag. That was annoying. Luckily, it wasn't two wheels, so I was able to navigate the airport without too much trouble. But with my pinky out. But the upright four-wheel swivel, one of the swivels was knocked off, so I had three. So I had locks that were TSA approved, but a couple times it'd get cut off for some reason or otherwise messed up. So more than once I was unable. Luckily, this was mostly on the way home, but one time I was en route. I'm like, hey, do you guys have bolt cutters? Because I can't. This lock is messed up, and now I can't open it. And so at the airport they had bolt cutters, so that was nice. I'm like, if I get to the hotel and I got to deal with this, like, kind of a pain. So if I'm here, so that was nice. The people are usually helpful. So I'm not sure why my locks were getting cut. They were, what are you gonna do? So, I mean, not 100 airplanes. This maybe happened 5 times in 2 years, so 100 each year. I'm amazed to this day. Sorry, I had to pause for some water there. I am amazed to this day. There were at least 2 occasions, maybe 3, where my luggage was on a different flight than I was. This almost always ended up being a return flight to Las Vegas, possibly because of too much luggage, or not enough time. So my baggage would usually be on the next flight after me. Once or twice it was on the flight before me, but at least 2 times it was sufficiently delayed. It wasn't on the next flight. So they're like, we'll bring it to you. So they had to, drive somebody out. One time I got my luggage at 4 a.m. They texted me or called me and they're like, we're going to be there. Is somebody awake? And I'm like, oh no, I'm good. Come on down. So I am amazed that given the amount of travel that I was doing, that I never actually lost anything. Nothing went missing, or to my knowledge, nothing was ever removed from my luggage without, nothing was ever removed. I think if somebody officially removes something, they have to leave a note or a letter of some sort, like, we remove this contraband or something. Never had any issues. So despite not using any sort of tracking devices, which I probably would today, not just trusting the system, it always worked out in my favor for some odd reason. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. There were some close calls, but never went south. This is not my snafu, but this is I could put this in my final, my closing statement here. I have some lessons learned, but this is a lesson learned. It was not my snafu. I think on my first flight now in my early days of flying, when I went to Japan, I went to Eindhoven, went to France the first time for SAM Microsystems, the QR codes were not the way to board a plane. You'd have a printed boarding pass, of course. So perhaps out of habit, perhaps a hidden sense of Boy Scout lore, being prepared. Who knows? But I had my printed boarding pass for Aer Lingus for my first flight to when I was heading to Leixlip in Ireland for Intel flight. My first trip abroad, first of many. So I had my boarding pass, but I also had the QR code. So I did the QR code and I was fine. But I don't think this happened on that particular flight, but eventually I would start to see either proximal gates or waiting in line to board a plane or something. Oh, my phone is dead, or trying to help the person. Oh, you have to do this, and you have to. I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of fiddling with phones at in the boarding moment, and I started to realize. I mean, this took like 2 or 3, maybe 4 iterations of this. It didn't take weeks or months. It was a long weekend. Like, oh, phones die and in my travels, I think I broke 3 or 4 cell phones under various circumstances, and I was like, oh, I gotta have a phone. There's no traveling without a phone nowadays. That's essential. So you break your phone, you're relying on your phone to get on the plane. You've now messed up everything. Everything is not going to unfold as you had hoped or planned. So I'm like, why would a dead battery, a crashed application, loss of signal, broken screen, somebody stole my phone, whatever the case, why would you let that cause as much trouble as can be solved by printing out one slip of paper? So I never bought into that. And I would get the quizzical head tilt, like, why don't you just print out, or why don't you just use the QR code? Why do you have boarding passes? There's a picture I posted somewhere, and I probably still have them, a stack of, hundreds of boarding passes. Why do you do that? Why don't you just use the app? And I said, when you see a few times the trouble caused by one phone issue of any kind, it's just not worth it. So it's not worth the chaos. And so that's a little bonus. But so not my snafu. I never didn't have my boarding credentials, passport, boarding pass, ready to go, bam, on. So a lesson learned early on. Good for me. So now we're coming to the end of today's episode. I will give some gestures, some things I learned that maybe you can apply to your travel adventures, especially with regard to airports, but it could be in general. The first one is more important than you'd think, and most people will blow this off. Most people will shrug or eye roll, like, who has time for that, or whatever. But this is, as someone who, again, no kids, no pets, no plants, so traveling solo, 99% of the time, if you are the pickup or drop off, you are you got the car. Can you pick me up at the airport? Sure. You're gonna go pick the person up, or you're dropping them off. And if you like the person or the people you are ferrying to and fro, make time to park and go into the airport. I know it sounds great. Like, what? Why would I even do that? Parking? Are you kidding? That's like $4 or whatever, right? Now, again, this is me traveling a couple hundred times in the space of 2 years. Especially when you arrive at home, when I was arriving to, work-related destinations in other countries, I certainly didn't expect someone to be chilling at the gate waiting for me. Although, there might have been there was a driver when we went to Eindhoven. There was a person waiting with probably Bruce's name on it. So we did have a nice Jaguar driver that drove us to our, where were we? We were staying somewhere in where is Philip? I can't remember where we were staying exactly. But anyway, so we got to see a little bit of Eindhoven from the backseat of a Jaguar, which was nice. The thing is, when you come back home, especially if trouble took place, if the flight was delayed or baggage issues or anything comes up, when you get off your plane, you go through the gates, you get your stuff, and you're at the baggage claim if applicable, or you're heading out to get your ride share or whatever. It's pretty much like anticlimactic. So it is quite a game changer if someone is actually there, happy to see you. So if you're the person picking up, it's nice, like, hey, I am waiting at home for the person to arrive. You could say, now, of course, there are reasons that this is impractical or impossible even, so it's not like a requirement, but I am saying it does make a difference. So if you take that extra step, you go to the airport, you park the car, don't pick them up on the curb. Don't pick her up on the curb. Again, circumstances occasionally will necessitate this mode. But I will tell you, if you are at all able to park, go in, be waiting at the wherever they come off the plane, if they come through passport control from an international flight or whatever the case may be, it does make a difference. Dropping off, there is the universal 100% of the time look over the shoulder as they pass through security, the final wave, all of that stuff. It seems trivial. It seems overly dramatic or something, but it is nice. It does make a difference, and you should consider that. If you are not a frequent flyer and you see people boarding first, getting some upgrades, whatever the case may be, and this is the general case, bear with me. Let me tell you now, if you are on 100 airplanes in a year, for example, if you are flying every week, if you're on long-haul flights all the time, these small bonuses are the sum of mileage and money and time, and sometimes frustration and angst, and it can wear on a person to be traveling like that with issues, with problems, with 4-year-olds kicking the back of your seat, etc. Right? These little perks smooth out the journey. These are not meant to be insulting. It's not meant to create a caste system. Unless a passenger makes you feel inferior for some reason, And this will sometimes happen if you are boarding and the business class people either make eye contact in some weird way or they avoid eye contact as if to say you're not good enough or something. It's probably something more like, I don't want to look at people and feel like I'm superior to them, or that just emphasizes the fact that I've either been upgraded or paid 25 times what they paid to be to have a little cubicle with my own bathroom or whatever they get, right? 99.9% of the time it is not supposed to be an us and them thing. It is literally the difference between man, if I'm going to be sleeping for 1/3 of my life, having a pillow that I like makes a difference. Similarly, if you're going to be spending so much time in the air and at airports, the airport lounges seem a little foofy, but it does make a tremendous difference for those who are traveling a lot. So it's not supposed to be a pinky out thing. It's not intended to be we're better than you, but people are paying money for tickets for flying, and there's work to be done on either end or whatever the case is. So the perks are earned, but they do. I will tell you, there were some occasions. So international flights, you would get flight lounge access, and there were some occasions where that really was very helpful. It was never a question of like, oh, I'm better than you, I get to go into this. It was literally like, oh, can I go in and just have a coffee and oh yeah, we got plenty of food. Fun fact, by the way, was I in Geneva? I was in Switzerland for a layover, and they had Lindt chocolate, the truffle ball chocolates everywhere. So nonstop supply of chocolate, very nice. That's maybe a little bit of a humble brag, but very nice. So yeah, it's literally like it's like having comfortable shoes if you walk a lot. It's like so many other examples that you could probably come up with yourself. It is not an attempt to bifurcate society into to us and them. So keep that in mind if you see somebody. They get to board first, or they get to. Maybe they've flown 10,000 miles this month, maybe 100,000. Who knows? The staff and crew. So the staff, I'm calling people that are on the ground. So the ticket counter, the boarding agent, is that what it is? The boarding desk, the gate agent. Sorry. So the people that stay on the ground, the crew, the flight crew, the attendants can make or break your flight. Treat them accordingly. You can be the angry passenger. I've encountered those. You could be the one in a state of panic for a tight connection, yelling at other passengers, whatever the case may be. You might be a 4-year-old kid kicking somebody's seat. But if you lose the crew, if you tick off the gate agent, if you become that passenger, all bets are off. You may not fly. You may not have a good time when you land. You may be in for some extended excitement. You might get banned. You might get banned for life. Who knows? So be cool. Treat them like they are on an airplane. Sorry, got a little email there. Treat them like they're on an airplane all the time, dealing with those kinds of passengers. Like, they deal with this all the time. You're not the first one. You're not the last one. But you don't have to be this one. So do not be that passenger, even if it seems like you want to be. And this was something, like I said, I would just say, you know what? There's another plane. There's another plane after this one. Can I catch this earlier flight? Maybe, is there any chance I could, if there's seats available? Oh yes, there is a seat available. No problem. So I could get home, 90 minutes early. There were many occasions where I could have escalated into some sort of, do you know who I am? Of course they don't, but I have premieres. No, who cares? But the bottom line is, if you just stay cool, everybody wants to get to their destination. So the learning lesson, as Ron informed me right up front for my very first international flight, those are the people that will make or break your journey. Behave accordingly. That's all I got for today. I do miss travel. I've often told people, if I was offered something similar, not at Intel, of course, but something similar to what I was doing before, where I was booking my own travel, setting my own itinerary and schedules, and having meetings, and of course, working with hackathon participants, some of the smartest and most innovative people in the world, put their time into those kinds of things. And it's nice to hang around with those kinds of people. Maybe it'll rub off on me someday. But if someone said, would you like to do that again? I would say yesterday or last week. When can I start? So never say no to travel, and make the most of it. To try to not tick people off in the process. Thank you for listening. As always, don't forget to check out buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo and ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/Dan Hugo for more information about the various goings on of this and my other programs and other stuff. There really is other stuff coming one of these days. When you're an army of one, everything takes two people. When you're an army of one, everything is a couch. And I got to pick up both ends. So there you go. Again, thank you for listening. Till next time.